Okay guys, got a little different style of video here for you. In this video we're going to review some of the session data that we've collected from our onboard data logger. We use the Micron 5 unit to collect all of our onboard data. Depending on what unit you have, you may want to consult the manufacturer's website so that you can actually download and review the data that it collects for you. But for us, we use the Micron 5, so we can go to the AIM website and we can download their Race Studio 3 software, and that installation package is going to provide you with a couple applications to help you get the data off the Micron as well as review the data. So once you've downloaded and installed the application from the AIM website, what you would do is you would set up the Wi-Fi on your Micron 5 GPS unit, and then you'd open this Race Studio 3 application. And once your laptop or your PC is connected to your Micron via the Wi-Fi, you could come in here, select the device, and you could download the data from your Micron. I've already done that, so we're not going to go through that process. It's pretty simple. Just follow the instructions that came with your Micron, and you can get that data downloaded. The application we're going to want to focus on is this Race Studio Analysis application. And this is the application that we're going to be able to use so we can actually review the data that has been collected for us. So let's go ahead and open that up. And this is the screen you'll be presented with. You can see I've actually downloaded 4 sessions worth of data here. And we've got some fields here that we can actually label so that it'll help us identify this data if we come back to review it at a later time. So let's review this top one here. So we can just select it. You can come down here and click Test Properties, or you can just right click on it and select Test Properties. So let's do that real quick. So you're going to want to give some of these fields some identifiers so that you can keep track of what data that you've downloaded here. So we'll go ahead and assign some of these. Let's assign the track. We'll go Utah Motorsports Campus. We'll add this value to the database. Click OK, and you can see that it's added that into this field here. We'll set up our vehicle. We were running our Cosmic chassis. Add value to database. Driver, Tevin Robbins, add value. Select what championship you're running. We're running the UMC Kart Championship, just like that. And now we've added some data in here so that we can identify what this is when we come back to it at a later time. We've also got a test type here, and this has some pre-built data that you can actually select, and this was our final race, so we'll go ahead and select final, and then we'll just click OK. And now you notice that these fields up here have changed, so if we come back and look at this, we know what we're looking at. So let's go ahead and open this top one here. You can either just right click it and select open, or you can hit open test. And when you open it up, this is the screen you'll be presented with. So we're going to want to go through this software. There's multiple windows that we're going to want to get opened before we actually start reviewing the data. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this software set up to at least how I use it. There's tons of stuff you can do in here, so you may find some other windows that you like to look at as well. But I'm going to show you how I set this up and how I review the data once I've downloaded it. So this is the default window that pops up. We're going to want to open up a couple other windows. We're going to want to open up our GPS window. We'll want to open up our histogram window, and there's going to also be another window called channels report that we'll want to open, and then there's this report up here or this window up here that we're going to want to open, split times analysis. But if we click on it, we can't open it, and that's going to be a pretty crucial window. So in order to be able to open that window, we've got to actually set up the splits on the track that we ran this weekend. So to do that, what we're going to need to do is set up the track map. So we'll come up here to map, and we're going to select new. And since the Micron 5 has a built-in GPS, it actually created this track map for us, which is real nice. And this map is actually inverted from where I'm usually standing and looking at the track. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this slider and rotate the map to where my perspective is. Depending on which way we're running, I'm usually standing here along the straightaway somewhere. So I've got this rotated so it's just showing which perspective I usually look at the track. And what you can see is it's actually got it broken down into all these different sections. And these sections, once we get our split analysis window open, it's going to tell us the time that we ran in each one of these sections. I feel that this is a little too many. Like, I really don't care what time we ran in this little green section right there. You see we've got a little couple, just these little itty bitty sections that I don't think we necessarily need. So what I like to do is I like to remove all these pre-built sections, and I like to set them myself. So in order to do that, what you're going to want to do is come down here and click remove all. And you'll notice that's going to go ahead and remove all those different sections that we were seeing on there. And now we can go ahead and we can set these up. So what I'll do is I'll just select right here at the start of the straightaway. And if we look up here, you're going to see this blue line. And I believe this indicates RPMs. I'm not 100% sure, but you can kind of see where the RPMs were high and the RPMs fell off. RPMs went up, came down, went up, came down. And I'm going to kind of build points based off of these points up here on this top graph. And that's going to be what I like to do when I break up my track here. So in order to do that, we'll select our first point, and then we're going to click divide. And what that's going to do is it's going to start dividing up the track for us. So let's find where we're going to want to cut this up a little bit, and that looks like a pretty good spot. It looks like he got off the gas right there. So we're going to go ahead and click divide again. Let's go find our next spot. Looks like about right there. And you can click up here on this top graph as well to move this. And we're going to go ahead and click divide again. And then we'll want to change the color of this section. So we'll just click this button down here, and that's going to change that section color for us. Let's go ahead and find our next point. It's about right here. Let's go ahead and click divide. Let's come over to, let's say, about right here. We'll go ahead and click divide again. Let's change the color. Let's find our next point. I'd say probably about right here. Let's go ahead and click divide again. Let's find our next point. Let's go right there. Actually, where was this one? Yeah, let's go about right here. Click divide again. And you can divide this however you like. It's going to be personal preference for you. And let's go right here to the end of the straightaway and click divide again. And then we'll change this so it is part of the straightaway. So instead of all those different multiple points, we've got it broken down. Now we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sections of the track we'll be looking at. You don't necessarily have to break it down. It's something I like to do just so I'm not looking at a bunch of little itty bitty sections that I really don't care about. Once you've got it set up the way you want it, you can just go ahead and click file name, and we'll give it a name, and click OK. And now that we've done that, now you'll notice we can open up our split times analysis window. And that's going to be the final window that I like to have open when I'm reviewing my data. So from here, now we can go back through and I can start showing you how we use these particular windows to get the information we're looking for. Okay, so now that I have all the windows open that I want to see the data on, I can start going back through some of these and reviewing the data. I like to start out with my lap manager window. In this window, we can see all the laps that we took for this particular session. And you'll notice that across to the bottom here, we can see the little windows that also represent the individual laps for this particular session. One thing to notice is that this lap 7 here has a different colored icon by it, as well as it's labeled reference. This was our fastest lap in the session. So as we go throughout these windows, by default, your reference lap will be the lap that's selected, and that will be the data that you see in that window. You can change that obviously by selecting any of these other little check boxes with any of these other laps to see data for that particular lap, but by default, your reference lap will be selected as we go through these windows, so just keep that in mind. One thing I like to do is get rid of laps on here that I don't want to see. For example, we've got our warm-up lap here, we've got the grid up lap, and we've got our cool down lap. And I know that simply by looking at the lap times there. If you notice, the lap times are substantially higher than the majority of the rest of the session. So to remove those, you can just select them, and then just like any other application, if you hold down the control key, you can select all the different laps that you'd like to remove. You can go ahead and hit disable lap right here. You could right click and click disable lap, and that's actually going to remove those so that we're not looking at that data as we go through some of these other windows. They just kind of get in the way. There's really no reason for you to have them on there, so I just go ahead and remove them. So let's go on over to our measures graph window. And in this window, this lower section, what we're looking at is we're looking at our RPMs for the entire lap for our reference lap, our fastest lap. In this upper window, we're looking at our GPS speed for the particular lap. And what you can do is you can just click anywhere here in this window, and if you look over here, we've got these little data boxes, and that's going to show us our RPMs for wherever we clicked on this graph, as well as it'll show our GPS speed on this graph as well. If you hold down the left click button and drag, if you look at those boxes, you can see that those numbers are incrementing as well and decreasing as well as we move along throughout the particular lap. And once you get to a certain point, you'll notice that the boxes actually move over to the other side. Once you get near them, they'll jump between the sides, if you notice that. But the data will be always displayed there in these little boxes. There's a couple different ways you can view this window. You can have it separated like I do here. You can overlay the data like this, if that's how you'd like to look at it. It's kind of just personal preference. And another thing you can do is you can also select multiple laps. So say if we wanted to see lap 11 here as well, we can just click that checkbox. And now lap 11 is displayed here. And you'll notice up here that with the RPMs, it just looks like a bunch of garbage because they're overlaid on top of each other. One thing you can do to kind of help clean that up is you'll notice up here in the upper left-hand corner, there's this per lap color checkbox. If we check that box, now what we'll notice is lap 7 is blue and lap 11 is green. So now we can kind of differentiate which line's which. And if we go back to our initial view, we've got our GPS up here and we've got our RPMs down here. Okay. Just kind of different ways that you can view this data. And a good thing about this is, for example, say you've got a teammate and they're willing to let you download the data off their Micron and import it into your software here. You could actually open up their test as well, and you could select a lap from their test. And what you could do is you can actually compare your lap to their lap. And what you'll notice down here at the bottom is we've got this third window that's popped up now that we've selected 2 tests. And as we drag and go through here, you'll notice we've got this little information box over here. And this is going to tell us the difference between the 2 laps as far as time goes. So as we go through here, our reference lap was 5 thousandths faster than our 11th lap, or excuse me, 5 thousandths slower. And as we go through here, we'll notice that our reference lap is now 2 hundredths faster than the lap 11. And we can just go all the way along here. And what you're going to notice is this lap 11 right here is currently 2 hundredths faster than our reference lap. Throughout here, 5 hundredths faster. Got a little bit slower right there, so maybe we ran into some lap traffic or we made a pass or something. Anything could have happened. If you've got onboard video, it makes it nice to be able to watch the onboard video at the same time as you're looking through this, so you know exactly why the times may have increased or decreased. but you can just kind of reference one lap versus the other. And as we come here to the close of the lap, you'll notice that our reference lap was about a 1/10 faster than our 11th lap. And we can confirm that. We could come over here to our lap manager, and we've got lap 7, our reference lap selected, and then we've got our lap 11. In our reference lap, we ran 1:09.8, basically a 1:09.9, and then on lap 11 we ran about a 1:10 flat, so about a 1/10 of a difference. So that's kind of some of the information you can get from this measures graph window. Another thing you could look at as well, with the clutch that we run, we can actually tune the clutch for specific engagement. And for example here, we see this valley. If this valley dipped well below where we've got our actual clutch engagement set, we may want to take a look at our clutch and make sure that we've got that set up properly, because these RPMs should, in theory, stay above your clutch engagement at all times. That's why we actually set that clutch engagement at that particular speed. So if the motor ever drops below that, the clutch is basically just going to grab and get you back up to that RPM that you're looking for. You'll notice that this chop over here, the Briggs LO206 motor has a rev limiter, and as soon as that rev limiter's hit, you'll just see all this chop because your RPMs kind of just jump up all over the place, and that's what that is there. That's why that's so choppy, is that's our motor on the rev limiter. Okay, so let's go on to our GPS window. And this is a great window as well. Since our Micron's got a built-in GPS, it actually creates this view for us so we can see the entire track. And what you can do is you can select multiple laps. So like the lap we were looking at before, lap 11, we can overlay it over the top of our reference lap. And what you'll notice is our driver took slightly different lines in between the two laps. In the best case scenario, you would want these laps to be basically right on top of each other. The more variance you have is just the more inconsistency that your driver has throughout the particular lap. So if we get some more laps on here, we can kind of see, and it looks, see that veer where he veered off right there? That was a passing zone, so most likely he made a pass right here on lap 17. That's why that jumped off right there. But again, you'd want to have your onboard camera ready to go so you can just verify that to make sure that's just not your driver being inconsistent. You can throw as many laps on here as you'd like, just to get a better view of how consistent your driver was being. And you can zoom in here so you can get real nice and close and actually see the lines that your driver was taking throughout the session. And like I said, ideally you'd like these lines to be basically one on top of the other, but with lap traffic and other drivers, these lines will vary from lap to lap. Go ahead and remove those 2 laps. Another kind of cool feature that you can do with this view is up here at the top, we've got this data animation button. We can go ahead and click that button, and we can actually see an animated view of our cart going around the track. Kind of give you a visual representation of one lap versus the other, and you can kind of see where one gains on the other going through each particular turn. It's just kind of a cool feature you can play with. And to stop it, just go ahead and click the button again. So that's kind of the GPS view. Just kind of gives you an overall view of how consistent your driver was being. If you see some corners where your driver's veering way off one line versus the other, they may want to tidy that up a little bit to get themselves a little more consistent as they go around the track. So let's move on to the histogram window. And what this window tells us is it's going to actually tell us how long in each particular RPM range that we were. For example, between the ranges of 3600 and 4200, we spent 11 seconds on this lap. Between the ranges of 4200 and 4800, we were in that range for almost 30 seconds. And it's going to do the same with the GPS speed as well. I'm really only concerned with the RPM range, because if you look at the Briggs specs for the unrestricted class that we're running, you want to be running your motor in your motor's torque range, the highest amount of torque for that particular range. So for us, that's roughly 3,500 to somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 RPM is where we want the majority of our lap to be as far as our RPM range. We don't want to be running the majority of our lap at 5,500 RPM because our torque's not quite as high. So if we go back here, we'll notice that between 3,500, we've got 11 seconds there and 29 seconds there. For about half the lap, we were in that torque range. And what we'll notice is that we've got some substantial time above that torque range. So what that tells me is maybe I could have peeled or put on an extra tooth, or excuse me, took off a tooth of the rear gear, and that may have pulled my RPMs down from these ranges and given us a little more time here in the torque range of our motor. So that you can kind of use that information to kind of help you get tuned in when you're not quite sure on where you need to be. You want to have your motor running in peak torque or your torque range of your motor, which, like I said, is between about 3,500 and somewhere between 45 and 5,000. So with what this is telling me I probably could have pulled a tooth off my rear gear and we would have been in that torque range a little bit better for this particular session or this lap here. Moving on, let's check out our split report. This is my favorite report. What this shows us is, if you remember when we set up our track map, we created those little individual sections. And this is going to tell us all the times for each lap that we ran through those sections. And what you'll notice is it's got some of these highlighted in blue. And if we look at those are our fastest times for that particular session. So what that does is that creates us this theoretical fastest lap, our theoretical best lap. And our theoretical best lap, if our driver could have put all the fastest sections together in one lap, would have been a 1:09.6. But our fastest lap was a 1:09, basically a 1:09.9. So what that tells me is he kind of left 3/10 out on the track by not going through all these sections as good as possible. I mean, obviously there's factors involved with that, other carts on the track, other lap traffic, many other things that could affect these lap times. But in theory, he technically left 3/10 of speed out on the track. He could have been running 1:09.6s in theory based upon this data. And if we actually pull up our track map, and we can do that by going to map, show track map, we can see that map we built with all those sections. So for example, this first section, the fastest time he did in there was a 4.5, and that would be this section right here, or excuse me, this section right here. And then the first section, second, third, fourth, fifth. So you can look at these and determine where you were fastest and where you were the slowest. And you want these times to obviously be as consistent as possible. If you come down here and you look at the differences between the times, and you notice one of them's got like a 2/10, 3/10 difference between all your lap times to that section, you're going to want to see what's going on with your driver so they can tidy up that section and make those lap times more consistent. So this is a real awesome window here with data that you can use. It's also got your best rolling lap. So it looks like the last two sections of lap 10 through the first 7 sections of lap 11 was technically his best flying lap, which is a 1:09.855. So not too different from our fastest lap. So that's pretty good. But that's what I use this window for. We try to find the sections that we're being inconsistent in so he can clean those up and get faster through those particular sections. And this track map is nice. So for example, if we came back over here to our lap manager, or our measures graph, and as we select through here, let's make this a little smaller. As we click through here, if you're not quite sure where on the track these individual points are, if you've got your track map pulled up, you can see exactly where your driver was at each individual point on this window. So this track map is nice. We set that up in the beginning, so this is definitely a piece of information that you're going to want to create. Every time you go to a new track or your track layout gets changed, you can create this track map. And then what you can actually do is, if we come up here to map, we can go to map manager, and if we select this track, we can load it for all the open tests. So we can basically assign that track to this particular test. So if we had multiple tests open, so we could go to our map manager, select the track, and load that for all open tests. And if you don't do that, what you'll notice, for example, if say that we were running a race and we set up our track like we just did on this one, and then say we go up back out to the track again and we load that new test data into here and we open it, when we go to open the track map, it's going to show the previous track. But if we assign it the way we just did, it's going to know which track to open instead of showing you a track from a previous session. So you'd come here to show track map, and this map configuration might be different because the last map that you had loaded up was a different track layout. So just make sure once you do create this map, so we could actually do that for all our tests in the database, just open these and then you could assign it to the particular track, so that when you come back in here and you open this up, by default it's going to pull up the correct track layout for you. So that's basically it, guys. Definitely a lot of useful information in here. For example, now that we've got two databases open, we can actually select laps from either database, or either session, excuse me, and overlay those. So you'll notice we've got our fastest lap from this session as well as our fastest lap from this session overlaid, and those look real good. Those are basically right on top of each other. So those are two pretty good laps there. Definitely, if you do have a Micron, definitely download your data, play with this stuff, get familiar with it. We like to use this while we're out at the track in between sessions, and we'll go ahead and we'll pull this up just to make sure that we've got everything set up where we need to. Make sure that our clutch is engaging for us where we want it to be. Make sure that we're running in the correct RPM ranges and things of that nature. Just a bunch of useful information that you can use to create and develop your race plan and get better as a driver and a tuner. So get familiar with this stuff. Get yourself a data logger if you don't have one, and have a good time at the track.